What's up guys, and welcome to a new video of mine. In this video I'm going to show you how to level efficiently and progress with your Poison Rogue. There's also other builds you can play while leveling, such as Shadow, but if you really like Poison Imbuement or Poison in general, then this is the absolute right guide for you. So the first question I get asked really often is, when should I switch to Poison? Well, switching to Poison is a choice that you can make when you find the Bursting Venoms aspect. How to get Bursting Venoms? Well, the best way is just gambling weapons, because weapons don't share the pool with any other items, such as gloves, for example. They share the offensive aspect pool with utility aspects, and if you really only want to maximize your chances to gain Bursting Venoms, then the best way to do that is to gamble weapons. So if you have played in the Eternal Realm and you grinded all the renown, you will have some skill points ready before starting out in the season, so don't forget to grab them from the Renown tab, and if you do, then just add the amount of points you get from Renown to the level to know at which level you have to skill which skill. Starting off, we take Puncture, because Puncture is the best basic skill for rogues, and Enhance Puncture, and then we pick up Twisting Blades, because it's our main damaging ability at level 4. And then we pick up Fundamental Puncture, because Fundamental Puncture applies vulnerable and we want to be able to consistently apply it. Further, we take Enhanced Twisting Blades and Improved Twisting Blades for more damage and the days. Then we pick up Dash for the movement. If you want to be a bit more experimental and have more damage later down the line, you can also pick up Caltrops here. It will slow you down slightly, but you will deal more damage, and Caltrops is probably better if you're playing in a group, because Caltrops also lets enemies take increased damage from all sources, and when playing in a group you're mostly limited by movement speed of the group as a whole, so Caltrops is definitely a decent choice if you're playing in a group. Then we pick up Shadow Step for more movement and breaking crowd control. Then we put points into Twisting Blades to reach the Subterfuge category, where we pick up Dark Shroud, Enhanced Dark Shroud, and Supporting Dark Shroud for the movement speed and damage reduction it provides us. Don't forget that at level 15 you pick up the special quest. This is very important because you want to unlock Inner Sight as early as you can and be able to switch to combo points later down the line. Then we pick up Enhanced Shadow Step and Methodical Shadow Step for increased critical strike chance and stun. And then finally we unlock the Imbuement tree, where we pick up Poison Imbuement and both of the upgrades, like Enhanced Poison Imbuement and Blended Poison Imbuement. Then we pick 2 points for the passives Deadly Venom and Alchemical Advantage. And lastly, we put the last point for a 5 out of 5 into Twisting Blades, and use 1 point in Enhanced Dash or Enhanced Caltrops if you play that, especially when you're in a group. And to then unlock the ultimate tree, which gives us access to Adrenaline Rush, and then we put in 3 points in Haste and 3 points in Innovation. Pick up Rapid Gambits, Concussive, and Trick Attacks, which then allows us to finally unlock our key passive, where we choose Close Quarters Combat for increased damage and attack speed, or if you're feeling very squishy and are a bit unsure, then you can also pick up Momentum. Further down, we pick up 3 points in Sturdy to boost our survivability and 1 point in Siphoning Strikes, and then we pick up what's remaining to boost our damage, like 3 points in Exploit, maxing out Poison Imbuement, and getting 3 points in Alchemist's Fortune. If you have found Bursting Venoms at this point, then Alchemist's Fortune will be very helpful to gain more procs of it, and so will Precision Imbuement, which you also put 3 points in after that. And then you put 3 points into Debilitating Toxins, which lets you take less damage from poisoned enemies. For our last points, we use either Methodical Dash or Methodical Caltrops if you're in a group, or if you're using Caltrops, you can also put 3 points into Frigid Finesse here instead of Malice, the 3 points at the end, and then we have spent all of our skill points. Remember, you can drop Dark Shroud from your skill bar once you put points into Poison Trap, because we're making use of the Umbros aspect. Alright, for gear progression, it's very important to note that we have a lot of aspects that we can get from the Codex, which I used in this build. Especially so the Twisting Blades aspect, which we want to pick up very early on, ideally even before we get the specialization. You basically just go straight for the dungeon and try to clear it and gain the aspect for Twisting Blades. Obviously, you will not have 6 Veiled Crystals to imprint this aspect right away, but the sooner you have it available, the better it is. There's also another aspect that we're getting from the Season Journey, which is Umbros. You get this from the 3rd chapter of the Season Journey, and this is very good because if you have Umbras and you have a little bit of attack speed and lucky hit chance, you can drop Dark Shroud from your skill bar and then pick up either additional damage from and utility from Caltrops, or you can put in Death Trap to get more pull. There's a lot of possibilities you can do that you can socket or slot into your skill bar if you have Umbras. You can also use Poison Trap, which is really nice because with the Shadow Decoy, Poison Trap is so much utility as well. And speaking of aspects, we also have Shared Misery, which you get from the Oblivion dungeon in Hevzar. And Twisting Blades is gained from Jalad's Vigil in Skosglen. With Shared Misery, you can spread your crowd control to all enemies, which lets them be CC'd longer. That allows you to deal more damage to them, especially with the close quarters combat passive, and they also deal less damage to you, well, because they're crowd controlled. Then we have Disobedience, which you can also pick up from a dungeon, and that's very important because Disobedience will allow you to have more armor, which allows you to stay alive and be more tanky in general against many enemies. So I recommend to pick that up early as well, and it will also be very helpful to you when you attempt the Capstone dungeon for World Tier 3 or World Tier 4 respectively, while still being a significantly lower level than the mobs which are in there. Pestilent Points is also a aspect that is imprintable once you complete the first chapter of the season journey. We utilize that here, so it's really nice to have that available. You will do a lot of dungeon dwelling already because you want to pick up all the aspects I mentioned before. So it's nice that some of the aspects that we use in this build also come from the season journey. Umbral is also an aspect that you can get from a dungeon. It's very important to get that as well because we apply a lot of crowd control and energy is a big issue in the early game. I also have a ring on swap here where I have Energizing on. I usually swap out my Umbral ring for the Energizing one whenever I encounter a boss. Energizing is also able to be picked up from a dungeon in Fractured Peaks, so you should definitely do that as well. Alright, for the hearts, we want to use the Brutal Heart Revenge as early as we can because it gives us damage reduction. The 20% damage reduction is very important if you want to attempt the Capstone dungeon at lower levels. This is not really about the damage it deals, it's really about the damage reduction. Then we have the Brutal Heart of the Shadow Decoy Trap. I think it's called Trickery, I'm not exactly sure, but the Shadow Decoy Trap is really good because when you're leveling and using Dark Shroud, it will trigger a Shadow Decoy clone that taunts all the enemies, which is also a crowd control. And while the enemies are taunted, they usually walk towards the Shadow Clone and try to attack it. This even works for ranged mobs, and this allows you to be able to damage them a lot more easily because they all come towards the clone, and with that you don't need big AoE like Death Trap, for example. Poison Trap obviously procs as well, and so does Smoke Nade and Concealment. And for our Wrathful Heart, we want to use Creeping Death, because Creeping Death is just absolutely massive. It gains a multiplicative damage increase for each different crowd control effect on the target, and we have a lot of crowd controls that we apply, like Slow from Puncture, Daze from Twisting Blades, Knockdown from Poison Trap, Stun from Shadow Step, Chill from either Caltrops or Penitent Greaves to use them, and Frozen, and then we also have Knockdown from Poison Trap as well, so I have 7 different crowd effects. And Taunt is also a crowd control, so the more you stack of that on a single target, the more damage we'll deal to them. And even then, unstoppable monsters still take increased damage, and staggered bosses also take increased damage. And with all of these crowd control effects that we have, staggering a boss is really easy. What's also a decent aspect to use is Noxious Eyes while leveling, especially if you're playing with Caltrops. When using Noxious Eyes, chilled enemies poisoned by Poison Imbuement will further be chilled for 20% per second. And then you also deal increased poison damage to frozen enemies. So that's also really strong to combine it with Caltrops or even Penitent Greaves if you have them. Right, for general gearing, you have to be aware that usually while leveling, you just have to use what you find because materials are still very scarce. I found this ring on level 50 and have not changed it since, and I'm level 79 now. Why? This ring has a 4 out of 4 umbral, and I have not found a ring that it's that's good enough to warrant me extracting this and then imprinting it on the other ring. This ring is still decent. Obviously, if you have a very, very terrible roll on the ring, then you could consider using another ring instead and extracting the aspect, but the problem is once you extracted the aspect and imprinted it on another item, then you can't do that again. So you have to be very careful where you imprint the aspect on. Right, as for general progression tips, I do very much recommend to pick up the aspects that we want to be using in our poison builds as early as possible from all of the dungeons. You can do that while you're still leveling, while you're still grinding renown. Obviously, grinding renown is a really good thing you can do once you reach World Tier 3. Because if you go into World Tier 3 earlier than level 60, you will not gain any benefit from going into World Tier 4 other than a slight experience increase. You will only be able to access ancestral items and equip them once you are level 60. So there's no real point in doing that before that, other than for the personal challenge maybe. And if you pick up all of these, make sure you also complete the season journey to at least chapter 3, so you can complete the seasonal quest line, which will drop you a guaranteed Wrathful Heart, and it's only 4 Wrathful Hearts, so the chances of getting the Creeping Death Heart are really good. And even if you didn't get it, you can then access Tormented Malignant Invokers of Varshan, I think, which you can use to spawn Varshan in the Malignant Tunnel, and he also has a decent chance of dropping you a Wrathful Heart. Alright, so for Paragons, you obviously have to swap the glyphs a little bit around for leveling, and I've been asked that as many times now, so I'll definitely show you how I'm doing it. So on the starting board, I socket in Closer for the damage reduction. You don't need the range upgrade of Closer to gain access to its additional bonus, and you obviously have to alter the pathing around the glyph socket a little bit if you want to utilize Closer as early as possible. On the second board, which is Cunning Stratagem, we socket in Exploit. You don't need the range upgrade for Exploit. I found that after I've leveled it already at level 15. You can just use these strength nodes here to gain enough strength to gain the additional bonus without having to level it up. So with that, you gain access to Exploit's additional bonus, which is really, really important. As early as around level 62, 63 is when you hit the second board. So that's really strong, and I definitely recommend socketing Exploit here as early as you can. On the third board, which is Cheap Shot, we socket in Turf. This is also solely for the damage reduction, because early on we are definitely limited by defense, and if you are more defensive, you can then have a more easier time surviving World Tier 3 and World Tier 4 Capstone dungeons. On our fourth board, we want to socket in Tracker. This is really easy because pathing the nodes around the board for 25 int is very, very easy, and you don't need the range upgrade here as well. For the fifth board on No Witnesses, we use Efficacy. For that to work, you do have to upgrade its range though, because you need access to this int node in particular. So that's usually by the time I'm 79 now, so once I get these I will be 80. This is usually the time where you have to start swapping nodes around to their ideal destination, especially when you start picking up the sixth board, which is Tricks of the Trade, where you then socket in Closer, and then you gain access to Diminish and Devious, which you then slot into your earlier boards, and all of that things start to happen. So by that time you will have done plenty of Nightmare Dungeons to gain the levels. Alright, the question that also comes up a lot is, in which order should I level my glyphs? And I say the first glyph you should level is Efficacy, because that is the first glyph you're going to use in levels 80 or something, where you have to have the ranged upgrade, and then it's probably the glyphs Diminish and where is it? Closer, because at level 85 or maybe 86 is where you start to gain access to the node of the Tricks of the Trade board, and that's where you have to start swapping the glyphs around a little bit. Also, you want to level Control, because you have to socket that into Cheap Shot, and for that to work with the additional bonus, you do need to have the range upgraded to level 15. The glyphs that are also important to level but not early are Exploit, because once we get access to Deadly Ambush, we need the ranged upgrade in order to have the bonus work for us. Other than that, just focus on these glyphs that we're actually using in the builds and not swap glyphs like Bane, for example. So that's efficacy, exploit, diminish, control, devious, closer, and tracker. We will not be using turf later down the line, so I also didn't level this up further than level 2. Alright guys, that's it for this video. If you like this video and all of my other videos, then don't forget to subscribe and activate notifications so that you get notified whenever I release a new video. I also stream nearly every day on Twitch at around 8 to 9 PM CEST is when I'm starting, so I would love if you guys hang out there. As always, if you have any questions, put them in the comments below and I'll see you in the next video.